So, what was the question again? Sorry. Hi, I'm Mukoso. Welcome to another episode of hashtag Share My Experience podcast. Today, I'll be exploring the topic of friendship, teenage friendships. And it seems like something very normal or mundane. But as I reflected on my teenage friendships, I realized that I didn't have a formula, or I feel like I should have had a formula for choosing my friends. But before I start, I'll be very much interested to get feedback from you on how you made friends as a child. What were your friendship do's and don'ts? And what did you look out for when choosing your best friend? For me, it happened almost very organically. I thought about it like this now as an adult, that anyone I vibed with was just my friend. But I've seen that friendships, relationships, especially the ones that will last the test of time, cannot be based on, as they say, vibes and inshallah. It has to have a basis. In my teens, I made friends with the people who were in close proximity to me. I remember my very first friends were our neighbors. We went to the same school, we lived next to each other, we played with each other, and then, we became friends. Even though it wasn't necessarily like the healthiest type of friendship, because now that I think about it retrospectively, one of them was kind of like a bully. But because you're used to someone and you feel like, oh, this is my friend, and you just kind of go along with it. And as I grew, in secondary school, my best friends were my seat partners, and so on and so forth. So for me, it was really just about the people that were in close proximity to me. And I know that was probably a normal thing. People don't go and find friends from like far away. But the thing was, I don't know what kept me in some of these friendships, or I didn't know what kept me in some of these friendships back then. But now I know what it was. It was my lack of confidence in myself. And perhaps maybe you're like that too. Because I just thought, oh, this is my friend. If I'm not friends with them, who will be my friend? Or something along those lines. So it's very possible that in teenage years, people would be friends with people because they were used to them and they couldn't see themselves without them. But that doesn't really work like that in adult life, does it? But then we didn't know better, or I didn't know better. There were some people that I thought were very mature for their age in secondary school who used to, and I remember then when they would have conflicts and people would go and settle matter. And I used to think, oh wow, I don't ever want to be in this kind of situation, because it seemed like something so very uncomfortable and drawn out. But I guess those were the people that understood the concepts of conflict resolution instead of like brushing things under the carpet. So for me, teenage friendships, how I made my friendships in teenage years were very tricky, and I wasn't very involved in the process. Granted, I was involved, but I wasn't intentional in choosing my friends. Are childhood friends really the best ones we have in life? People always used to say that. And I remember when I went into university, people would say, oh, you've already made your best friends, or you've made your good friends, that university was a place with fake friends. It was so funny, but they said, people and I guess I understand the analogy. At this stage, people's personalities have more or less formed, and people are, more aware of themselves and what they are doing. And if I think about it, I had a very weird experience with friendships in university. I tried to do the secondary school thing that I did, and it backfired. So when I got into school, we had to spend some time getting our accommodation and our reg number. So you spend many days and hours on lines and in queues. And the people that you line up next to, you start to talk to them. And that was what happened. And I started to make friends with the people around me. But one particular girl who ended up being my friend, but it just turned out that she was a user. And it wasn't because she was a bad person, but she had grown up in an environment where that's how they were raised, or that was the mentality. Now, she wasn't someone who was very wealthy, and she had come into school. At that point, she didn't even have her school fees. But, she had managed to get the admission, so she had come in and she was trying to just make ends meet. So apparently she was targeting people who she felt, were wealthy or had money. And long story short, she scammed me. I ended up getting scammed as a 100-level student because I made friends with the people in my proximity. So to that question, I guess I had more authentic friends who didn't necessarily come to uni with me, because my childhood friends who I had grown up with, we all ended up going to different universities. So I got to university and I had to find new friends. But I tried to find new friends using the old formula, and that obviously blew up in my face. So perhaps, truly, you make your best friends, or I will say best, your most authentic friends coming up. One of my closest friends was the very first person that I made friends with in primary school. She was my seat partner. I scooched over for her to sit next to me, and we were friends for the longest time. Because I guess when you think of childhood innocence and the fact that, you would gravitate towards people from a genuine place, yeah, it's very possible that your childhood friends might be the friends for life. But the caveat there is people grow, and as they grow, they mature, they grow apart, they change. I know a few friends who were friends from childhood, but they can't even stand each other now. And one of them says because she has seen her change, she has seen her become someone that she wasn't. Even though, from childhood, there were those tendencies or those things that she used to do. But then as she grew up, they amplified, and she took on this new persona of someone that her childhood friend did not recognize. So she was presenting herself as something to the rest of the world, but people who knew her from childhood knew that wasn't who she really was. So to be honest, that's a tricky question. I'll be interested to hear back your experience on where you made your most authentic friendships. I spoke about how there were some girls in secondary school then that used to go and squash beef and have like all these, it was a whole thing. I dreaded those things where they would sit down and people would come and give evidence and they would judge the matter and judge the case. Those things were so cringy for me. So I think I grew up being one of those people that didn't quite resolve conflict. So you know how when they had all those people that used to just keep malice with you? Yeah, that was me. I'll just decide that you're not my friend anymore and just move on. Obviously, that was a childish way of handling things. But the truth is, many of us grew up that same way. So we find ourselves living in a world where there are so many people that are so conflict averse because they think that conflicts are bad things. But I've come to know that it isn't. Conflict in any society is a functional necessity. It will always happen. I had a friend that we never disagreed. Never. It wasn't as if they didn't do things to hurt me, or I'm sure vice versa, but we never brought it up. We just always used to sweep it under the carpet. And then one day we just stopped being friends. Ask me why, I don't know. I just realized that perhaps the person just wasn't reaching out, and then I wasn't reaching out, and then we just weren't reaching out. Something may have happened. Or what I believe is that it was probably a culmination of a lot of things that we never addressed. So avoiding conflict in friendships just so that you can keep the peace could be detrimental in the long run. I know someone who used to say stuff like, oh, I don't quarrel with my friends. I don't disagree with my friends. And that's a good thing, right? But the truth is, if you have situations where, and you will have situations where your friend will probably do something to upset you, say something that rubs you the wrong way, and it doesn't matter how resilient you really are. If you think that you can take it and take it and take it and never really resolve the issue, one day you'll get to your elastic point and you either snap or snap back. Childhood friendships were more authentic, even though they were tumultuous to a certain extent, because we were still like discovering each other, our do's and don'ts, our likes and dislikes as human beings, right? So navigating first yourself and then either another friend or another group of friends it was interesting at best. I remember in secondary school, I was part of what they would call a clique, but we weren't really like a clique. We were just friends who became friends with other friends. So I think at the end of the day, we were like a group of, must have been about 6 or 8, and it was just 2 friends each who were friends with each other, and then all of a sudden we all became friends. So 4 sets of 2 friendships merged together quite organically. Nobody really planned to be a clique, and it was interesting. And I think we meshed so well because we had a lot in common. We were obviously from all different backgrounds, different tribes, different religions, different denominations. What would I say would have been the common factor that drew us together? I think it was just because we had the same goals and ideals in secondary school. You know, there were those ones who were the popular girls who wanted to be popular and trending. Then they had the ones that wanted to melt into the wall and be wallflowers and not noticed. And then there were people in the middle. Yeah, we were the ones in the middle. We really didndo for this or that. And we just wanted to, we just found that we wanted the same things, right? And so that was how we, came together as a clique. So in adult friendships, I guess it's kind of the same thing. You definitely gravitate towards people that you have things in common with at first. But then it's your interests, and now I'm speaking like your selfish interests will probably come into play. And this is a lesson that I have learned, because I'll say I'm one of those people that learned late. I was naive for the longest time because I still use the same formula that I used as a child coming up and going into the world. I'd mentioned before about the girl in university who was a user. But the truth is, she came from an underprivileged background, and she found herself in university with like all these other people, and she wanted to be a certain way. And she made up her mind that, listen, I'm not going to identify with where I'm coming from. I'm going to perhaps maybe give myself a new lease of life and adopt a new persona. And there were lots of people that did that as well. But that will also affect the kinds of friendships that sort of person would go for. They wouldn't want to associate with their childhood people because they are not conforming to their new lifestyle. So then you see friendships that have an agenda, right? And you see it also, in adulthood, people who, want to, I have to be careful about this because it might be a bit derogatory, but some people are actually sociopaths. They just want to move up in life. They just want to be seen and see and be seen. And so they'll gravitate towards people who serve their agenda. So I think that in adulthood, you gravitate towards the people who are hang on, let me see. Adult friendships are more aspirational. People want to associate with the people that they believe are in line with them, in line with where they are going to, or in line with who they want to be. You see things like, nice, good-looking girls only want to be friends with good-looking girls. Skinny girls only want to be friends with skinny girls. Rich boys want to be friends with rich boys. Those kind of things happen. I'm not saying that it's a hard and fast rule, but that's the major difference, or the major thing that I saw that was different coming up from childhood to adulthood. So that innocence in forging friendships was taken away, and personal agendas were introduced. The first question is, what is investing? In layman's term, or in the financial world, investing is taking your money, your hard-earned money, and putting it into something that you hope will give you a good yield, right? And you invest because you want returns, basically. That's the basis of investment. Where you make your investment determines the returns that you get. So in friendships or relationships, it's the same. Where you invest is where you make your returns. So think about it. I've heard this, and I'm sure you've heard it too, how they say friendship is like a bank. So some people go and they deposit. You go to the bank and you keep making deposits. The more deposits you make, the more money that you have, right? So that when you need to make withdrawals, you have money. But then you can't always make withdrawals without making deposits. Because if not, you take everything you have and have nothing left, right? And you make deposits because you want to make withdrawals. So it's the same thing in like friendships. To be able to get the best or make the best kind of investment, you have to be sure that you're balancing your deposits and withdrawals in the friendships, in the people that you have decided to be friends with. The art of making wise investments is the key to determining what kind of returns that you will get. And so this is where I would say that choosing the right friendships, choosing the right people to invest in, choosing the right people to be friends with will determine the kind of returns that you have in relationship and in life. So youth is a major advantage in making investments. And so as a teenager, this is the best time for you to determine the kind of investments that you're going to make in people, because that's where you will reap long term. Now, if I knew back then what I know now, I would have invested differently. And when you start to invest when you are young, you have a longer period of time to invest and more to reap as time goes on. So I believe that investing in the right relationships is basically a very crucial thing that you can do to ensure long-term results in the future. This is a major advantage in your investment journey. So investing in people early will help you, one, to grow through the lessons and the experiences that you have, in your interactions with people. Two, bounce back from setbacks, because there will be setbacks. I mean, even in normal investment, sometimes the market is bullish, it's bearish, you lose, you gain. Same thing with friendships. So you'll be able to bounce back from setbacks when you start to invest early. And where you make your investments really matters. Where are you making the majority of your investments? Who are the people that you're investing your time, your energy, your resources, your abilities, your capabilities, your skills? Where are you investing them in? Who are you investing them in? Some people just think, I have neighborhood friends. They're just my neighborhood friends. We just hang out and just do stuff in the neighborhood just because. Like it or not, you are investing in those friendships. Haven't you watched those movies where someone comes up from like a bad neighborhood and becomes rich and moves away and becomes something, and then somebody in the neighborhood who never left who is probably a no-do-gooder comes and is like, guy, remember from the past. And they can do that because you've made deposits into those friendships, or they've made deposits and they've come to collect. So I think that the greatest lesson that can be learned from this looking at friendship as an investment is to be wise about who, where, how you're spending your time, resources, energies. Who are the people who are really your friends? Now, there are different categories of friendships. People have their very close circles, then you have your wider circles, and then you have your even wider circles. But there's, you have the people in your closest circle who are the people who know the closest things about you. Then there are people that you just know you on the periphery, know things, but they don't know intimate details. And then there are people that are just your acquaintances. So by the time you're able to do that friendship map, then you know who you need to be investing in and who is just like a drive-by hi, thing. Now that was one lesson that I learned very late. I always had a small circle and I poured way too much into that circle. So for me, it was, these are my friends. Everybody else, that saying, no new friends. Yes, that was me, because I felt, I have my people. These are my people. But it's a mistake. Even Jesus had his 12 disciples. Oh, by the way, there were 72. Did you know? He had 72 disciples, right, who he sent out in pairs. Then he had the 12 that everyone knows who are his apostles, who he commissioned and sent out. But then guess what? During the most prolific times of his life, for example, when he went onto the Mount of Transfiguration, he only took 3, Peter, James, and John. He didn't take all 12. He didn't call all 72. So understanding your friendship circles and understanding the investments that you make into those circles is the key to having successful friendships. Hashtag what I wish I knew as a teenager. I wish I knew that my friendship circle could have been as wide as I wanted it to be, and yet as small as I needed it to be. I closed myself up so much because I felt like I didn't need that many people, and I poured in so much into the people that I felt like I had, and it was a risk that didn't necessarily pay off in the long run. So I wish I knew that. Who you spend your time with and the things that you spend your energies, resources, and everything that you have doing will determine what you get back. Now I'll give you a practical lesson to do. Write down the top 3 people that you spend the most time with. And write down the top 3 things that you spend your time doing with and without the people. By the time you finish doing this, you have an overview of the things that you are investing in. Take a critical look at them when you're done and see if it is something that is worth, or if there are things that are worth your time, or the things that would give you a greater result in the long run. Now, some people make friends for the season. So in this season I'm in, I just want to party and have fun and, have a good time. This life is too rough. This life is only one, YOLO. And you make friends for the YOLO. That's great. But in the long run, in 10, 15 years, will you still be partying? And if you're not, what value are your partying friends bringing to you? My advice would be always look to the future. As a teenager, yes, everything is all good and now, but you will not remain a teenager forever. You're going to grow up. And adulting is hard. We say this all the time when they say adulthood na scam. It's not a joke. So I would implore you to make investments now that your future will thank you for. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I look forward to seeing you here next time.